Howdy, folks. Quick little intro for this episode about Jennifer's body.
Yeah.
We got a couple things. First of all, I want to let you know that that this episode was actually accidentally released for just like 10 or 15 minutes the week of the cat's meow. So 19 people downloaded it and heard it without what makes it so good, which is the interview with Jen Brown of Genre Graveyard and Women in Caskets, who joins us partway through this, or who joins me for an interview partway through this to dissect our dissection of Jennifer's body.
It's very horror-like.
Yes, it's good. It's good that we have her, right?
Yeah, I think so too. And if any of those 19 people, if you came out of it being like, what do those straight white dudes know about Jennifer's body? Well, that's why we brought in a guest to kind of take us to task and to, make sure that we have the right things said about this movie.
Yeah, she's an expert in horror and in Jennifer's bodies, being that she has one.
Yeah.
And I'm really not good at podcasting. As you'll hear throughout this episode, I pretty much get everyone's name wrong that I could possibly get wrong. And I tried to salvage it afterwards. I may not be good at this, but I am creative in turning my mistakes into, I hope, something that brings you a smile. What did you think about that, Brian?
I think it's. Can I say what you do? Can I say
well,
it? Give it away?
Do we want to surprise? Don't spoil it for me. Maybe you can say it without saying it.
I think it's made a new kind of episode, and I feel like we should intentionally do something like this again. It makes it a little more special. I feel like it's a little extra flavor. I really enjoy it. So we need to say people's names incorrectly more often, right, Andras?
Yes, I always say your name right, Brian, but I spell it in my head, Brian, like John Bryan, Brion. Whenever so I am. It's sort of like it's sort of like putting the middle finger up behind your hand so nobody can see it. You don't know it, but I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm spelling it wrong in my brain. But yes, some people do call me Andras. Funny, actually, I think Jen that almost gets my name wrong sometimes, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine for her, but not for me. Anyway, folks, sorry about that, and I hope you enjoy it. And also, as far as mistakes go, this episode was recorded a little bit out of time. It was supposed to originally come in right after our month of Kidmania, but then the month of Noscaring just
got bigger.
Yeah, just got bigger and bumped this a month ahead. So if you hear us referring to last week, it's really last month. So just to be clear, the episode came out at the wrong time. I pronounce a bunch of the names wrong. The dates are wrong. And the only thing that's right about this whole episode is Jen Brown is going to join us. So get ready for our episode about Jennifer's body.
Radio 8-Ball.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting the World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8-Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8-Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
I'm Larry Bishop, and you're listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about
Jennifer's body?
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andras Jones.
And my name is Brian Connolly, and I'm also a host.
That makes 2 hosts for you, folks. Ain't that a bargain?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. People were missing you the last 2 episodes, but we did close out the Destroyer. We had a little teaser of your voice, but you're back. You're back and ready to explore Jennifer's body.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited too. I never thought I would be exploring Jennifer's body.
Yeah,
I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
This is it's gonna be. They must have intentionally thought of this title just to make us sound like total creeps. Like any guy trying to talk about it, being like, "Yeah, I saw Jennifer's body last night. Pretty good." Or, "I saw Jennifer's body last night. Not for me." Just makes me sound like an asshole.
I hate Jennifer's body. I love Jennifer's body.
I'm really into Jennifer's body.
It's like a creepy Mad Lib. This movie. So we're gonna get into talking about this, but let's lay out a few ground rules, okay? So first of all, we need to acknowledge that we are not the audience for this film. I liked it, and we're going to be talking about it. You appreciated it, and we're going to have some conversation about it. But no matter what we say about this film, there are better podcasts to listen to talking about Jennifer's body, usually hosted by women. And there are a bunch of them out there. I highly recommend checking out one of those podcasts. But that doesn't mean we don't have thoughts about it. So we just needed to make that really clear.
Yeah.
You cool with that?
Yes.
The other thing that's important to know is that Brian and I are both from Olympia, Washington, which is the birthplace of Riot Girl. And I'm going to be referencing this shared background mightily for this episode, which means that Brian and I are likely to sound both obscure and insufferable. And believe us, we're aware of this, but in order to talk about this film, it's kind of unavoidable. So as long as you can put up with us, we are happy to accept your cringing judgments of our efforts. So why should we talk about Jennifer's body?
Here we go. It's gonna be gnarly.
No, please. Don't, please.
Wait a second. I just thought of something. Jenny, you're the girl for me. You don't know me, but you make me so happy. I tried to call you before, but I lost my nerve. I used my imagination, but I was disturbed. Jenny, I got your number. I need to make you mine. Jenny, don't change your number.
They killed you. I'm still here, aren't I? I mean, they did go all Benihana on my ass with that knife, and it should have killed me, but for some reason, it didn't. Maybe it did.
Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it now. Say it, say it, say it, say it, say it, say it, say it.
So, to me, Jennifer's Body is the film that fulfills on the promise of the name of the Riot Girl band Bikini Kill. Megan Fox doesn't wear a bikini, but she is used to tempt the male gaze and kill it in this film that, to me, makes her a bikini killer, if not a riot girl, which I would say she definitely isn't. I watched Jennifer's Body the night after watching Under the Skin, and the two films are definitely exploring similar territory. thematically at least, and that will also inform this conversation. So the film, in brief, is pretty simple. Jennifer's Body is a film about the friendship between a, quote, hot girl played by Megan Fox. Is it Megan Fox or Megan Fox?
I think it's just Megan.
Megan Fox. And a nerdy girl played by Amanda Seyfried. At the beginning of the movie, the hot girl, who is also mean and not very smart, gets in a van with an emo pop band fronted by Adam Brody, and the next time we see her, she has a taste for boys. Literally. From then on, she, or the demon who has inhabited her, learns to feed and love the vessel of Jennifer's body, while her friend and the hero of the film, played by Seyfried, tries to figure out what's going on and how to save or kill her friend. Now, that's the story, but what makes this film so exciting is the swaggering way it takes out its vengeance on boy culture, with writer Diablo Cody coming off of Juno, director Karyn Kusama coming off the thrilling failure of Aeon Flux.
It's Kusama.
After breaking through with Girl Fight, and all these talented young actors working around the cinematic weapon that is Megan Fox. It's a film that is so confident in pushing the buttons it's pushing that it raises some great questions, even beyond those it may have intended. And that, my friends, is Jennifer's Body.
Good job.
Thanks.
So, how is the world wrong about this movie?
Oh, boy. Oh, girl. All people. It's so many ways. Well, first of all, I'll just say I had never even heard of this movie.
Really?
And I had never paid... I'm not a horror guy. I've never paid attention to... I don't think I'd ever seen a Megan Fox film before. It just completely went under my radar. Had no idea about it. And I only came across it when I was doing my research on Karyn Kusama for Destroyer.
It's Kusama.
And it just bowled me over. So I have to imagine that there are plenty of other people who that's the case for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's also this whole story in listening to podcasts about it where the whole release was really messed up because, you know how at the beginning of this I said this film, we're not the audience for this film, but the people who put it out
but that's what they thought.
We were.
Yeah,
they
were like,
thought this will be
any dude who thinks Megan Fox is hot, this is the movie you want to see. Which is crazy because that means you're making the audience for the villains of this, or the people in this movie that get killed by Jennifer, basically. And so, like, of course, when it came out, it had this insanely low audience score because they were trying to market it to, like, boys age 17 to 30. Because, like, oh, you love Transformers movies, you love Maxim magazine, you're going to love Jennifer's Body. This movie written by a woman and directed by a woman and about, like, feminist ideas. Nope. And so like every guy's like D-, C-, F. No, not for me. And it wasn't until recently that people started to find this movie like you. Like I really like you're not the first friend that's told me that they love this movie. Like in the last year, I've had many people, just like friends, just being like, "Oh my God, I didn't know about this. I didn't even hear about this movie," and they really like it.
Yeah. Well, that's another area where people are wrong about it. But I think that I'll tell you. So after I watched it, I got really excited and I had conversations with 3 of my favorite people to talk about movies with. And all three of them are guys. Sorry, ladies. It's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because you don't want to talk to me. If you wanted to talk to me about films, I'd be down. But all 3 of them had immediately had very strong reactions to Diablo Cody, who wrote it.
It's Diablo.
It wasn't like, oh, I've seen that film, I don't like it. I haven't seen that film, and I don't think I'm going to because I hate Diablo Cody.
It's Diablo.
She is attached to it, and there's something about her that is divisive.
Yeah.
And that immediately makes her very interesting to me. Particularly, I feel that way particularly with writers, more than actors, probably even more than directors, because writers, it's so much about a voice.
Yeah.
And there's so much writing for film that is just sort of cookie cutter and doesn't have a personality. So if you are able to express a personality that is that specific and defined, like whether you're Charlie Kaufman or Woody Allen or Diablo Cody, it's Diablo, or a Nora Ephron or Quentin Tarantino, you're going to have people who really don't like it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have people like me who are just hungry for that.
Yes.
So Diablo Cody is going to be a big figure in our conversation. You got that one right. Good job. This was her follow-up to Juno, which really put her on the map. And again, was another film that was divisive. But the success of it, you can feel the confidence in the writing in this one. I think everyone who was involved in this really thought that they were doing something special.
Yeah.
And they did. And I guess that's the real world is wrong thing about it, is that to do something that is so unique and assured and have it really be, hobbled before it even gets released, and then to have that release just sort of be a nothing for what you, in terms of what you were intending.
Yeah.
It makes it pure world is wrong fodder.
Yeah.
So, hate to out you here, Brian, but you were one of the people I was talking with, and you have some critiques of Diablo Cody. It's Diablo. Also, you're a screenwriter yourself, and so I'm sure you judge her as a fellow professional. I know that as a songwriter, I judge songwriters as a songwriter, whereas as a screenwriter, I've only written one screenplay. So anyone who can do that, I'm kind of impressed by. I haven't written 50 screenplays or as many as you have, and so I don't judge it the same way. But what's your take generally on Diablo Cody? It's Diablo.
Hold on, my dog's barking again. I think because she's a big fan of this movie, and so she's being like, "Hey,
she's
don't
a bitch."
Don't cut this down. Well, it's just like what you said with these other writers is like when writers have a very unique voice, sometimes they connect and sometimes they don't. Like I'm a huge David Mamet fan, but I have a lot of friends that hate the way David Mamet writes, can't stand it. Doesn't mean he's any less of a writer. It just means it's not for you. It's really like you're tapping into like bands. Like it's like if someone says they don't like, like Elvis Costello, I'll disagree with you. But I mean, it just means it wasn't for you, So like, there's nothing I can do about that for you. It's your taste, But I think there's something about the constant. It's weird because my complaint for her is not my problem with Quentin Tarantino, but in a way it's similar, of like that constant pop culture stuff. With Diablo Cody, for some reason, bothers me. Like when they call each other Vagisil, or just sort of like the, just the way that like Megan Fox's character talks in this movie, or like the way in Juno, the way the characters are like talking about, I don't know, like the weird rhyming in it. For some reason, it just doesn't connect to me. I don't know why, because I like other movies that do that. Like I'm certainly not against, very stylistic writing, but there's just like, or maybe I just don't think it's funny, because I know a lot of it's supposed to be funny. And for whatever reason, that the kind of comedy that she writes isn't funny to me. Like, I remember watching the trailer for Juno and all the stuff that Rainn Wilson was saying. I was like, I don't get it. I don't really understand. But other people, it's like, it reminded me of when I watched Napoleon Dynamite. I know people that love that movie, and I saw it in a theater full of people that were like losing their mind with how funny that was and how much they liked the dialogue. And it just did not connect to me. There was something about it that I did not... It wasn't for me. I can tell it's like, this is not for me, this movie. It's for somebody else.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, in the same way that... Well, Tarantino's a great example. I totally understand why some people don't like it. You know,
Yeah.
There's certainly things he does that are alienating in his writing.
Yeah.
Whether it's being referential to things you don't know or using racial epithets that he probably shouldn't. I mean, I don't want to tell him, I don't want to say he shouldn't, because I don't want to ever tell an artist what they should or shouldn't do. But I don't think I would. I think a lot of people wouldn't, and it raises a barrier to entry for some people, and I think that's the case with Diablo Cody.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're describing, for me, again, even though it's not for me, I loved it. I loved that stuff. The one screenplay I wrote was about a band of women, and I tried to get the tone. I actually tried to make them sound, I didn't know I was trying to make them sound like Diablo Cody characters. It's Diablo. And let me tell you, it doesn't, that style of writing doesn't work if there's a man's name on the page. So, and that might be the kind of thing that would make me have some sour grapes or be hostile to Diablo Cody. It's Diablo. But in my case, it doesn't. It's just sort of like, oh, cool. At least someone can get away making women talk like that in a film. And so that's great. And it actually, even though for me, my experience with that screenplay was a negative one in terms of the response, there was something about watching this that validated. I was like, oh, okay, well, a lot of the things that I did in my script that people rebelled against or thought were offensive are happening here. So it may not have been good, but at least it wasn't offensive. So thank you, Diablo Cody. It's Diablo for liberating me that way. And we'll get more to talking about Diablo Cody as we go on. It's Diablo. The other thing about this, and this is just sort of in our process, is we have been planning on doing a Brown Bunny episode, and that's going to be next week. And since that film is going to necessitate a discussion, and in some cases a celebration of Vincent Gallo's toxic masculinity, I thought this would be a good opportunity to explore toxic femininity. And personally, I want to say I don't really like the idea of using the word toxic to describe people or behaviors. So I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek about that. But I feel like using it as a overall term for this makes it better, because it's sort of like, as someone who loves Brown Bunny, I want to welcome the critiques of what appears toxic to people who don't relate to it in that movie. And vice versa. If there are things that come across as toxic to me, or you, who this film isn't made for, in Jennifer's Body, I feel like it's good for that film to be open. Like, it's sort of a general openness to the idea that if a film isn't made for you, the people who it's made for should be open to the idea that there's a reason why the film that you love might hurt someone else if they watched it. Mm-hmm. And that's how I want to approach Jennifer's Body, in the one sense to broaden the critique, but also to start off by inviting in this destroyer, bikini killer goddess to, basically to defend the members of our audience who might be annoyed with our next episode. And if we can do justice to Jennifer's Body, then maybe they can listen as we try and do justice to Brown Bunny.
And I think if there was a crossover, Jennifer would totally murder and eat Vincent Gallo's character from Brown Bunny.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's something I want to talk about. Let's get into talking about this film now. So, Karyn Kusama. It's Kusama. Have you seen any of her other films?
I've seen Aeon Flux, which was fine. It looked great.
Yeah,
it was a great looking movie.
It is a great looking movie, but it's one of those films where she went from directing this really cool, gritty first film of girl fight that looks like I don't know, maybe they spent $1 million on it. I don't know. I could look it up. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more, but it just doesn't look like a big movie. It's a gritty little character drama that's people in rooms talking and fighting. And then she went right on to Aeon Flux, this massive superhero, like not really superhero. What is it? I don't know. Sci-fi kind of superhero-ish kind of movie. And it just seemed like it was a little bit, I don't want to say that it was too much for her, but I just feel like that's sort of too much for anyone to go from making this film that you had total control over how it was made to being a part of this big machine and being told that you're in charge, but you're not really in charge because you're not qualified to be in charge of a special effects department when you've never done special effects before, right? Things like that. No knock on her, but then that I love that this is the follow-up of like someone saying, okay, well, let's go back to doing something that I know how to do and take everything that I learned from Aeon Flux and bring that to this genre film. One thing, I don't know if you noticed it at the beginning, but it's in keeping with the humor of the film, and talking about it is maybe why this film isn't meant for us. But the movie starts with basically a bunch of holes, images of, a very, yonic nature. So like there's this, they have this waterfall, but the waterfall is just this hole in the ground. And then you cut to a shot and you see this tire swing hole. And then you're in Jennifer's room and she's watching these people on exercise and they're showing their butts which have holes in them. And then you cut to Jennifer's mouth and she's chewing on her hair, another hole. And then you see her from the bed looking up. And it's just sort of like, this is a very riot girly vaginal entrance to our film of Jennifer's body. Did you pick up on that?
I did not. Guess I'm not looking for holes. I don't know, but you picked up on it, so good for you.
This was my third watch, and so this was the one where I was really watching for the filmmaking. But there's just something about that. Like, it's throughout the film, there's some real filmmaking going on and a lot of thought. What did you think of Karyn Kusama's work on it?
It's Kusama.
Just in general, as how the film looks and how the film plays out besides the script.
It's a very assured filmmaking. It's very much like it has a style. It doesn't feel like this movie does not feel like other horror slasher movies of the time. Like, it doesn't feel like just a generic run-of-the-mill horror movie. Like, there definitely is someone behind it that's got a point of view. And like, I really liked the end credits showing more stuff during the end. Like, so if you see this movie, we're just going to spoil it, so watch it before you see it. But like, I love that this movie ends, but then it doesn't end. That during the credits, it shows you a whole other big chapter of this story that would have been the end of any other movie. That could have been how the movie ended, but instead they decided to show you just weird snippets of it through the end credits, which I thought was great. Like, so that's different than like just some straight to red box horror slasher or whatever. Like this, it's definitely got more of a point of view. And actually, when you read the critic reviews of this movie from the time, it was exactly split like you think it would be. Like, half of them are like, what the fuck is this? And the other half like it all pretty much. And all of them, including Ebert, who liked this movie, who he normally hates the movies that we talk about on this, but he actually liked this one. He gave it 3 stars. All the critics who liked this movie compare it to Twilight, which came out the year before this. And they're like, Twilight is like this horror movie with teenagers, and it's such garbage. And it just like, it's so flat, and it's just like, it's kind of sexist, and you hate it. It's not good. And finally, here's a movie that like is a refreshing version of a horror film with teenagers or for teenagers that isn't Twilight. And they all say that. They all quote Twilight as like the opposite of this movie for those that liked this movie. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, I think that's necessarily fair, because I think they're very different movies.
Oh, yeah.
But like, yeah, this movie has more of a, like, you can tell this is a filmmaker that isn't just getting hired to make some movie or hoping to make some money or hoping to make this as a launching pad. Like, a lot of horror is usually used as a gateway for a lot of people to like kind of move to the next thing. But this, you can tell, is the type of horror movie where it's like, no, they have something they really want to tell you with this movie.
I'm not surprised that Roger Ebert liked it. It has, I don't want to say that it's like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, but there are some similar aesthetics and themes and supremely quotable, in-your-face, button-pushing kind of screenplay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you see that?
Yeah. I mean, Beyond the Valley Dolls is also not a movie for everybody. And the dialogue is very stylized. You know, it's not naturalistic at all. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's talk about the characters a little bit. So, I mean, Jennifer Check, that's her name, Jennifer Check. She's terrible. She's even before she was a demon. She's a bad friend, a bad person, sort of like the Vincent Gallo character in Brown Bunny. Even though she's the star of this movie, she's a charismatic villain from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
We're not the audience for this. And so I'm just trying to think of other examples of, and there are plenty of them. And this is why this isn't a critique. I think that's part of what's intended. This is a film for girls and women. And I know as a guy watching guys who are cool and charismatic who get away with shit that normal people shouldn't get away with is part of the fun of watching a Bill Murray movie or of watching some Tarantino movies, or like we could just go on and on. I mean, who can you think of any touchstones when you think of the archetype that of this movie star playing an unlikable character? Well, not an unlikable character. She's actually very likable, very charismatic. She's just a terrible person if she was a real person.
Well, in a way, she's kind of like, she kind of acts like the mean girls in Mean Girls. The ones that, it's interesting, like the villains of that movie is the titular character of this movie, you know? Like she's the popular girl who's kind of, sassy and jerky to everyone around her, and so it's just like, it's interesting. Like she kind of, or she reminds me of like the Heathers in Heathers,
Yeah. Well, and Mean Girls written by Tina Fey. Heathers is written by Dan Waters, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think of like the way that these characters are portrayed. Yeah, there's just something, there must be something that's very thrilling for women watching this, watching Megan Fox turn all of that. Like, I'm trying to think, if I ever had a friend like her, if I was like the Amanda Seyfried character. Her name is Seyfried. And in another movie, when she becomes a demon, she might kill that person or kill other people. But the fact that she only kills boys, it's like, I wonder if you were someone who was terrorized by like if you're a woman who was terrorized by a Jennifer Check type person in high school, and then she became a demon and she just started only fucking with the boys instead of like, she stopped picking on you and just was like, I'm only going to kill boys now. I think maybe that feels like there's something there. The relationship between, listening to people talk about the relationship between Jennifer and the Amanda Seyfried character. Her name is Seyfried. Or Seyfried character. You got that one right. Good job. Feels like there's a lot of universal relatability to their relationship. If you've been a girl in high school having a friendship that straddled that sort of high school class divide with the popular girl and the nerdy girl, or just kids who grew up together, there's got to be something in that is very satisfying to see. And their relationship is the most interesting thing in the film. Right.
Yeah.
What I also think is interesting about this is that the film has been part of what the world in which the film has been re-embraced is in this post-Me Too world. And it's really interesting to me looking at this film in the context of Me Too, because, well, for the most part, the people that Jennifer chooses to take out if there's vengeance, she's just feeding. But if in the idea of the movie, if this is a Me Too movie, the people that she's taking her vengeance on are basically innocent boys who are pretty much only guilty of being sort of insufferable and, I don't know, available and dumb. Basically, like the film, and I think it's fair, the film sets up these boys the way that countless movies have set up a lot of girls to be hunted by the hero of films. So it's totally fair that she's feeding on the innocent. What do you think about that, about the fact of who she's targeting?
Well, I think it makes the movie more interesting, because I think it's like, because she is sort of a villain, you know, because she is killed. Like, she definitely didn't deserve getting murdered on the satanic altar by this, you know, dopey goth band that happens at the beginning of the movie. But like in a movie, normally she would be spending the movie seeking vengeance against them, you know? But instead it's like, I'm just going to like kind of, you know, take these dopey guys who think I'm hot and then just like, not even really seduce them, just be like, hey, do you want to hang out? And then be like, okay, and then kill them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's more interesting. It's like why I think Death Wish is a very interesting movie, because like Charles Bronson, you know, has this horrible thing happen to his family, but he can't, but because it's New York City, it's too big and he can't just like find the guys who did this to his family and the police won't help. So instead he just goes after anybody he thinks is a criminal. Also very wrongly, I feel, in a way, in those Death Wish movies, you know? And this, in a way, this is like that, where it's just sort of like, well, she can't, or maybe doesn't even care to go after the dudes who actually killed her, but, you know, she can take care of these other kind of, they're creepy guys. They're not villainous men, but they're definitely kind of, you know, not the greatest. Do I condone their murder in real life? No. But in a movie, sure.
Yeah, well, could you compare the people who celebrate Jennifer Check as a hero? Could you say that that's analogous to people who, like guys who will watch Apocalypse Now or The Wolf of Wall Street and see Robert Duvall's character or Leonardo DiCaprio's character as people to emulate, as opposed to people who are being criticized?
Yeah, or Travis Bickle or any of these people. You know, it's just like men have always embraced like gangsters and people that are in real life villainous, like not good people. Like I love seeing Rambo blow people away, you know, like, and whatever reason when it's flipped, guys get really upset. Be like, wait a minute, it's not cool that she's like killing all these innocent guys. It's like, yeah, but you're fine with, you know, like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger blowing up buildings and like who knows what, people on the sideline. Or you love, you know, like Jason Voorhees. You love seeing, you know, like a guy with a machete just hack, you know, people's heads off just because they decided to fuck. And you think that's great. But when it's like a lady doing it, it really rubs you the wrong way. Which is not like, yeah. And that's very interesting. And like, that's a weird double standard. And it's also like, in a way, this movie's great because it taps into that. Like, it's sort of like, because like, well, you know this from being in horror conventions and stuff and being part of the horror film world, you know, that like, it's a very kind of bro-y place for the most part. It's a lot of, it's a lot of guys, and the women that they love are kind of the ones in the skimpy outfits. And it's like people that kind of look like Megan Fox in a way. And so having the movie be kind of this kind of changing around that way is really interesting.
Yeah. Now, when you were watching it, did you have thoughts of Under the Skin, or is that just because I had literally watched Under the Skin the night before?
No, let's keep tying this into people who made movies that had Nicole Kidman in it that we did last month. It totally.
Wait, Under the Skin wasn't Nicole Kidman.
No, but that's Jonathan Glazer who did Birth. Yes. That Nicole Kidman was in, and so totally, because that's another movie where. And that's a movie that all the dudes who watched it loved, where it's this woman going through and killing innocent men, kind of eating them, putting them in that weird tar dimension. Yeah, it's a weird movie if you haven't seen it. But none of those guys are bad guys. None of them deserve it, But that's okay. That's not how horror movies ever work. So it's weird that would be the complaint for this by some people. Of they're killing innocent guys. It's all the innocent women that die in every slasher movie ever made. It's fine to change it around. It's okay. It's not to compare it to. I don't mean to compare it to another movie written by a man, and back to Tarantino. But it does remind me, and we'll totally do an episode about this. But it reminds me of Death Proof in a way, because all the dudes that could fucking sit through hours of the Reservoir Dogs, or John Travolta and Samuel Jackson talk about hamburgers, and they love it and they eat it up, threw a fit when they had to sit through women doing the same thing, which is what Death Proof was, where it's they're talking about the things they like, and I hate this is so boring, and that was such a complaint I heard from so many men. But it's but wait a minute, he's writing the same kind of characters, but you just don't like it because they're women? Okay.
Yeah. I'm with you. Death Proof is one of my favorite Tarantino films.
Oh, it's great.
Not one of his favorites. He certainly talks negatively about it. I didn't have the money to do it. I had to do it. And it's
I love it. I think it's one of his best. World is Wrong about Death Proof. Yes. In the future, we'll definitely do that.
We'll do that. Now, do you feel like Jennifer Check, the Megan Fox? Now, she looks different, but I was talking about Bikini Kill earlier. She seems, I can't stop thinking about Kathleen Hanna, the lead singer of Bikini Kill, when I'm watching
Interesting.
Jennifer. They're different, but they're also there's enough of a similarity, and Diablo Cody sort of comes out of the world of the generation that grew up worshiping Bikini Kill and Kathleen Hanna, rightfully so. How familiar are you with Bikini Kill?
I'm not very familiar. I was too young, so I was more into La Tigra, so I was more into the more popular, the later stuff she did.
I feel like there's a subtle something in there that feels like Olympia and Riot Girl that you recognize if you are familiar with it, and if you're not familiar with it, it just is in the soup of the film.
Yeah, and then the movie ends with a whole song, so you have that Courtney Love presence, that's also kind of,
right,
the corporate version of that
now,
world.
Now, is that one of the...
Yeah.
One of the issues that you think people might have about Diablo Cody? It's Diablo. As a sort of national cultural figure, it's always a thing when someone comes out of an indie punk rock scene and then becomes very successful commercially, that there's a sort of a judgment of being a sellout or of co-opting something that was more legit before it was being made by a major studio with millions and millions of dollars and everything that goes into that. Do you feel like is that part of, I don't know, of your critique of the film?
Not for me. I just don't think it's funny. That's why I didn't like it. It's just, just why there's things that I find funny, things I don't. That's just me. But I think for other people, for sure, this movie, because this was Diablo Cody's big follow-up to Juno.
It's Diablo.
Which was much beloved. As polarizing as that movie is, that movie won an Oscar. People really like that movie a lot. That's a movie that my aunt and uncle saw, that's a normal people went and saw that movie, even though it was this little movie that could, and I think following up with this more this violent horror, more genre thing caught a lot of people off guard. I think it was a lot of people like, well, wait a minute, like what's going? Like you're making this movie starring the lady from the Transformers movies. Like, so I think there was a lot of people who thought that either she sold out or like, oh, what happened? Like, what are you guys doing going in this direction? Like, you could make more things, you know, that are smaller, but now you're making this horror thing and because the way the movie was sold was it was sort of like this, yeah, it just felt like an FHM Maxim, you know, magazine movie sort of horror thing. So I can see why it totally would instantly rub people the wrong way before they even saw it.
Yeah, what do you think about Amanda Seyfried's performance? You got that one right. Good job.
She's always great. I mean, she's like what grounds this movie. Like Megan Fox and the way she acts is not how any human being I know actually behaves in a movie. And that's sort of the problem the way I had with Juno is it felt like everybody was acting in this movie world that I couldn't quite relate to. But I feel that, how do you say her name? Seyfried? She's sort of the human quality of this movie. Like, even though the movie begins with her doing this ridiculous, like, kick in jail, and it's like this heightened genre, but her character, the way, you know, and I'm sure it's totally intentional that she's more of like, oh, I'm the awkward, nerdy, you know, every person in high school, I'm the normal person. And so you need that. If the movie was just Jennifer, then it would be maybe even harder to get into. But you need that, like, the other side of the coin of, like, the normal person who's sort of, like, also through the movie, the more she figures out what Jennifer's up to, is, like, reacting the way that you hope that person would have, like, oh my God, that's terrible. You're eating people? No. So, but she's one of those people that I feel is, like, slowly has become more and more interesting over, like, she's definitely one of the best, you know, actresses of the last 20 years. Like, I was a big fan of hers from Veronica Mars, and I think she's one of the only good parts of Mank. Like, she's a very compelling person. Did you ever see, you know, another movie that might be interesting is, did you ever see the Linda Lovelace movie that she was in where she played Linda Lovelace?
No.
I bet that's another interesting, that was another movie that people were polarized on, but I bet she's really, really good. Doesn't look a thing like Linda Lovelace, but that's okay. Because I bet she does a very good job in it. Because
Wait, Linda Lovelace?
Lovelace?
You mean?
Yeah.
You mean
Deep Throat?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda Lovelace. I'm like, who's Linda Lovelace?
Linda Lovelace. Yeah. So yeah, she's great. I love her. Yeah. But in this movie, she's very likable. You really like her. Like, you could totally see watching this movie. This could have worked as a TV show. Also, like, I feel you could have made this a really interesting genre television show following around Amanda Seyfried's character, and then, you know, having all the stuff happen. Like, that would be a great. They could still do that, actually. Make a Jennifer's Body television show.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. It's although I really, like you're talking about the end of this, I'm so happy when a film is really just contained, like wall to wall. It is what it is, and when it's done, and you feel like that's great. I mean, that just it took me to some new places, and it's ending. It's really, like I said, a really very satisfying end to the movie in an original way, and then it's just like it's done, and I really like that. Let's talk a little bit about the supporting cast in this film is kind of amazing. I mean, you got J.K. Simmons, Amy Sedaris, a young Chris Pratt shows up for just like, was he in 1 or 2 scenes? He's in...
Yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot. Adam Brody is...
such a good jerk in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really excellent. And a very short but awesome cameo from Lance Henriksen.
That was unexpected. Yeah, great.
You're like at the end of the movie, and all of a sudden she goes and there's a car. Like, whoa, wow! How'd you get Lance Henriksen for one scene? Very good, very, very good. Were there any that really stood out to you?
I just think Adam Brody's really good because normally he's very likable in things. And in here, he plays just like the ultimate douche, just showing up in this terrible, just sort of like garbage rock band with the stylish haircuts, and just taking it to, like, as if they weren't bad enough, they're also Satanists willing to murder a woman to gain more fame. So just like, you really, like, you already hate them, and then you really hate them. And then the fact that they cash in then on the tragedy that they caused, and like, it's just so great. They're pretty good for the bad guy, for, you know, some of the bad guys of the movie, I think. And having Adam Brody be the lead of it just makes it, it's so much better than if it was someone who was like sneering and more like, I'm a bad guy. But the fact that it's like usually charming Adam Brody totally makes it more effective.
I know you said you didn't think it was funny, but I loved this line. Of all the great lines, I don't know why I stuck on this one. I think it might be an Amanda Seyfried voiceover. Probably is. She's talking about the club where the band called Low Shoulder. That's the name of Adam Brody's band. Where Low Shoulder is playing, and they're like, yeah, it's not really a club. All we have is a jukebox and a sticker toilet. And then you hear the music for Foreigner's Urgent playing, and it just really, I've been in places like that. Something about that line, all we have is a jukebox and a sticker toilet. Like, not a sticker wall, a sticker toilet. I just thought that was a great line. And just all the, like, the way, even before Jennifer becomes the demon, she's already talking about boys as salty morsels. Like, she's already hunting boys. Like, she was hunting boys even before the movie started, before she makes her transformation. It's kind of like, you know, if you meet a character who's going to be a male character who's going to be turned into a Jason or a Mike Myers, but we meet them in person and they're already just 2 degrees shy of being a rapist in real life. Not that that's quite what Jennifer is, but she's a hunter from the very beginning, which I think is a really interesting choice. I know I keep harping on it, but I think if she was a nice person or a good person who got made into a demon, I feel like this would be a far less interesting movie than that she's a bad person who all of a sudden gets these superpowers and she gets to really be as bad as she wants to be. And there must be something that feels really good about watching that transformation of a character. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just, we've seen before the innocent turn into the demon. Like, that's The Exorcist, you know, like, so having it be someone who's not totally likable at first and not totally innocent at first, it's more, I think that, I don't know, that is interesting. Because you could have made a movie about, this Seyfried character. Keep saying her name wrong.
Seyfried.
I keep thinking Siegfried and Roy. Seyfried. Yeah. If you could have just made a movie about that character being turned into a demon and being like, I'm evil and sexy now, I'm a demon. But we've seen that movie made many times by men. So, like, I think it's more interesting to have someone who's already kind of there, but then they just turn it up a notch to adding murder to the mix of things. And there's clearly something wrong with her, and yet these dudes don't stop wanting to sleep with her. So that's kind of on them. Like, there's clearly there's a problem going on. Like, she starts to look very pale. Like, she's constantly showing up covered in blood at her friend's house. Like, there's a lot of red flags that these guys are walking into.
Yeah. Now, do you relate to these guys at all, or do you feel like the film sets them all up?
I don't. I think the film sets them up to be kind of, heels in a way, like the gothy guy that she eats. It's just like, it's just sort of that thing of like, no matter how cool or alternative you think you are, you still want to sleep with the cheerleader. It's just sort of like, almost that's what it's commenting. It's like, oh, here's this punk dude. He will totally, no matter what, go out of his way to go have sex with Jennifer. Like anybody. And I like that. Like, that's an interesting thing. Like, you want to pretend that you hate these people, that you hate like the popular people, and you're so edgy and you're punk. But then if one of these popular people, like this cheerleader, is like, will you have sex with me? Then the punk's like, oh, of course I will. So I think that's pretty funny. And interesting and very true, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. What do you think about the boyfriend, Amanda Seyfried's boyfriend character?
I mean, he just seems kind of like a...
He's portrayed as more sympathetic.
Yeah, but again, but he seems to be into doing stuff with Jennifer at the end of the movie on the way to the dance. He doesn't put up too much of a fight. You know, when she starts seducing him or coming on him, he's just kind of like, well, you know, and that makes him just seem like a jerk like all the other guys. Like, you want him to be this great guy through the whole thing, but then that's definitely a flaw in his character in the end, because he's not he doesn't seem like he would be completely true to his girlfriend when Jennifer's like, hey guy, and he's like, oh well, you know, he doesn't go through with it, but he seems like he would be game if it was happening. Did you get that vibe when watching it?
Well, I mean, Amanda Seyfried's character also sort of makes out with Jennifer.
Yeah, that's
too.
True.
So
yeah, so like
it's kind of like I feel like within the world of the movie, not being able to say no to Megan Fox or Jennifer Check is kind of across the board. Like, that's her, like, for better or worse, that's kind of her power. I don't think that's what makes the character played by, I'm looking up his name, played by Johnny Simmons, who plays Amanda Seyfried's boyfriend. I don't think that's what makes him sort of an unlikable character in the film.
Yeah.
But I think that there's all these other subtle ways that the film makes him just into, like, I guess when they say, like, boys develop slower than girls.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of get a sense that he is still very much in the world of high school and concerned with childish things, whereas the Amanda Seyfried's character is from pretty much the beginning of this, when the movie really kicks in, she's living in this world of much more real concerns.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene where one of the things is that Amanda Seyfried's character and the Jennifer Check character, they have some sort of psychic link. So when Jennifer is feeding, Amanda can feel it. And there's one scene where Amanda and the Johnny Simmons character are having sex while Jennifer is feeding, and Amanda has this really strong reaction to what's going on with Jennifer, and he thinks that it's because he was such a great lover. He's like, was I too big? And you can see he's kind of proud and happy. And there's just like little, again, that's sort of like the conversation in the van with the emo band. Are they a goth band? I don't know the titles anymore.
I think they're emo-y, gothy, rock pop. It got so messy by the aughts of like what is what.
Right. Exactly. But you just kind of, there's something in the movie where you can kind of feel like every time men are talking in the film, there is sort of an implied judgment, parody, the sense of thinking of all the shitty, dumb, or ignorant things that men have said to Diablo Cody. It's Diablo, that you just put into the script.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you've, like, I know what it's like to deal with dumb men in some ways, but not in the ways that are represented in this film. So it's just kind of, I don't know, interesting to see how to try and watch this film as someone who it's not meant for, and try and use it as a gateway into understanding the people that it is made for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's probably why I like it. My experience of growing up in a riot girl town is that like a lot of these women just don't like me on sight because I'm a guy. But I guess being like, the reason I've chosen to stay here and is because there must be something in me that likes being around women who don't like guys. I find it. I'm not gonna say I find it it's not like it's a challenge. I don't be like, oh, I'm gonna make you like me, but it's more like, yeah, I don't like guys either, but like those kind of guys. And maybe if I can, maybe if you got to know me, you would like me, and then that turns out not to be the case either. Anyway, so I feel like we're getting towards the end of our dissection and exploration of Jennifer's body.
What a creep you sound like.
I mean, I feel like, have we got all that we needed to get out of Jennifer's body?
I think we really probed deep into Jennifer's body. I think we really took apart Jennifer's body, dug around in Jennifer's body, dissected Jennifer's body, and really, I think we did a good job. I'm finished with Jennifer's body. It's fun.
And second film in not too much time that we've had a cameo from Amy Sedaris.
I know. People just like to sprinkle her in. She's like salt and pepper. She just makes it better no matter what you make. Just put a little bit of Amy Sedaris in there, and you got something good going on.
She's the salt and J.K. Simmons is the pepper.
I think it's the other way around. I think he's the salt, she's the pepper.
So, okay, well, let's play an ad for one of our Paper House compatriots, and then kick it over to the interview with Jen Brown.
One dream, one wish, one piece of mind. A podcast hosted by Nico White about One Piece by Ichiro Oda on Paper House Network. We'll see you every Monday.
Now, as we probably said earlier in this show, you are something of an expert in the genre of horror, and particularly focused on feminist horror films and a feminist lens on horror films. I got to know you through your excellent podcast, Women in Caskets, and I'm also very excited about your new series, Genre Graveyard, which is a sort of an extension of Women in Caskets. And we just thought it would be a good idea when we're covering this film, Jennifer's Body, to invite an expert in this topic to point out anything that you think we may have missed in our celebration of this much maligned and underappreciated film. And also, if necessary, to take us to task for any areas that we may have gotten wrong. So, Jen, you the judge.
I am. And being that I am also the owner of Jennifer's Body.
Oh yes, you have your own Jennifer's Body to contend with.
I have my own Jennifer's Body. I do. And funnily enough, I have a lot of opinions about that, specifically about how the body aspect is used and referred to, not only as a woman, but as a Jennifer with a body, and specifically as a Jennifer with a body who, when in high school, while being geeky as all get out and a punk rock nerd, also developed massive tits at a teenage that sprouted out of nowhere and caused me a lot of problems and a lot of unwanted attention I did not want, and were hence very pivotal in my burgeoning riot girl-ness. And I feel it's very, I just feel like I'm very appropriate for many reasons to be talking about this movie.
Already you're complimenting me on my good taste. Excellent. This is, yes! I like how this is going. Okay, great.
Yes. It's perfect. I mean, for anybody who looks pictures up and is like, her boobs aren't that big. I had a breast reduction when I was 25 before I got any sort of fame for my acting or producing or anything like that. So that's why. And I specifically got that because A, they were uncomfortable, but also I really hated the male gaze. And when you are a woman with what is considered a overly sexualized body part, like breasts, are you find out very quickly what the patriarchy is, and you find out very quickly how much it sucks, because pretty much all people refer to you by is by your, oh, that's big boobed Jen, or that's that Jen. And it was a lot of my life before I got rid of them. So I have feelings.
We're here to hold space for those feelings, Jen.
Well, first off, I think it is very smart for you to have someone who is female identifying comment on this podcast, because it is sorely needed. And you did acknowledge that when I listened to it. It was very clear that you were aware of your blind spots. So I'm not so much going to take y'all to task for anything you said, as far as maybe add a correction and or a reasoning behind why I think certain things y'all said aren't entirely accurate.
We can handle it, Jen. We can handle it. Brian and I grew up in Olympia, getting corrected by original Riot Girls. We can handle it. Lay it on us. We are here to learn. So please.
So here on that note, you specifically point out that you feel like there's like a lot of like riot girly things about this movie, and that you are correct. However, your comparison of Jennifer's character and Kathleen Hanna is uncategorically wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. I see zero similarities in Jen and Kathleen, outside of perhaps owning their own sexuality. Now, I do feel like Kathleen Hanna, she's one of my personal heroes. I do feel like there's a lot of Kathleen Hanna energy in this movie, but I would definitely not attribute that to the character of Jennifer. Now, what I could see happening is if Jennifer, as a character, had actually not been so horrifyingly abused and murdered by the true villains of this movie, which are fucking low shoulder.
Right.
She very well could have grown up to be a badass like Kathleen Hanna, but she was not given that chance to redeem herself, essentially, as she grows. One of my main issues with this movie, as far as both judgment in people who like it and dislike it, is that thinking that watching Jennifer do what she does to these men is cathartic and enjoyable, or that Jennifer's character herself is not innocent and a bad, horrible person. I have a counter for that.
Lay it on us.
Teenage girls are very complicated in that most women are, if they're a mean girl in high school, 90% of the time, like it is with most trauma and most people who are considered villains, there's a reason that they act the way they are. They are not just bad people. For Jen, it is very much, she has a body that is considered sexualized. Before she was able to sexualize it for herself, it was sexualized for her. Now, does she clearly own her own sexualization? Yes. Love that. That's great. She is completely aware of what she wants and how she can get it. However, like Megan Fox in real life, she absolutely was guided to be that way because of, not that Megan Fox was guided to be sexual, but that as a young woman, because men viewed her as a sex object at like 12, like the character of Jen internalized that and embraced it, which I think is very powerful. However, I also think that it can come across as being the mean girl because she's embracing like these sort of negative things, these toxic femininity aspects, if you will, which you bring up. But I really do see Jennifer as a true innocent, and she really isn't that bad of a person before the demon takes over her body. She does some stuff that's pretty shitty, but teenage girls in general are pretty shitty. Even the good ones, like me. I will even admit, like, I got picked on a lot, but because I got picked on a lot, I would then thus pick on people that I shouldn't have picked on. It's this, teenage years are terrible. And I think most people can agree that 90% of the time, the person you were as a teenager really doesn't have that much bearing on who you turn out to be. Because hormones and mental illness and all peer pressure and expectations and all those toxic messages that we're sending to boys and girls, like, just not a good combination in general. Like most teenagers, although I do believe that's changing as a lot of the teens that I meet these days, because I have a lot of teenage fans for a lot of the voiceover I do, and I meet a lot of them at cons, and they are absolutely growing. I wasn't able to come out when I was a teenager. I mean, yeah, Sleater Kinney and Kathleen Hanna and Bikini Kill were like my favorite bands, and I was a Riot Girl, but I was still closeted because it was still not considered okay. And for someone who was as open as I was still closeted and still held, you know, a lot of, yeah, just, you know, I internalized a lot of this shit that was thrown onto me, you know. So my feeling is that Jennifer, while being, yes, a mean girl and maybe not, you know, obviously being the best person, I take issue with her not being called innocent. There's a point in the podcast where y'all talked about how she's not an innocent. And I highly disagree with that. I do believe she's innocent. She did nothing to deserve what was done to her.
Oh, of course, yes.
In any way, shape, or form. And I also don't believe that she exists in the movie after she is murdered. Everything that Demon Jennifer does is not who the real Jennifer was. It is the demon who has possessed her body and has definitely taken on the toxic parts of her personality and then amplified them. But it is not her. And if I had to criticize the movie, it was the one thing I will say that didn't get a chance to get clarified enough. But what I'll say, any criticisms I do have of this movie have nothing to do with the direction or the writing. I think they all have to do with the way the studio chopped this movie up. I'm assuming, because there's so many things that I feel would have been made clear. And it reeks to me of the studio interfering in its message, in my opinion. But I do love this movie, and I have to apologize profusely to anyone that told me they loved this movie 10 years ago, because that was not my original takeaway. I was absolutely one of those people that had a stick up their butt about this movie when it came out. And I know now is because at the time when I was watching it, I was very much in the thick of my pretentious music film sort of age, where if things weren't done perfectly, I was kind of an asshole about it. And I was also going through my own, like, emotionally abusive relationship at the time. So my opinions on some things were a little weird because I was dealing with my own mental anguish. But on rewatching the film later, and again for this podcast, I was like, you dumbass, this has got everything you love. The only issues with this movie are with obviously the way the studio, like, wanted it to be advertised and marketed. and the way that they possibly cut out things. Like, I feel like J.K. Simmons, Amy Sedaris, you don't put those people in movies to use them for one or two scenes.
Same
like,
thing with Lance Henriksen. Like, he's...
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like, the cast.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Holy shit. I mean, Amy Sedaris is also one of my heroes. Massive, massive, massive influence on me. And there's just no way that was the only scene she was in. So I feel like there's a lot that got taken out of this movie.
We need Jennifer's body, the director's cut.
I know there's an unrated version. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's a director's cut or if it's just unrated. So I'm not
I've seen that,
sure.
and it does not have more.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, then no. Yeah, there needs to be a director's cut because I if I'm wrong, okay, I'm wrong. But it just, why does J.K. Simmons have a claw arm? Why? Like, there's all these things that I'm like, there's no way Karyn Kusama, who's an incredible director, or Diablo Cody, who I think gets an unfair rap. I'm with you, Andras, 100%. I feel like there's no way that those things would have been, or Amy Sedaris' character would have been introduced without more explanation. I just don't, it's just, I can't imagine that. I could be wrong, but to me,
I
it
want
seems
a
like
4-hour version of Jennifer's body with
Me too!
with the whole with the backstories on all these characters. Yes.
Yes.
With the low shoulder. I mean, the low shoulder are the villains, and they're in it probably just enough. But I have a feeling that there's also some great satire from Diablo Cody about them on the road and like music videos of them and like
Yes! Oh my gosh,
Build out the world.
Yes. Seriously, because like, to me, low shoulder are the villains, straight up. And that, there's a few things, like if I had written the script, I probably would have made the story more about getting vengeance on low shoulder. Which
but isn't it great the way that is played at the end? It's pretty awesome. I will say,
but yes, it is very great that that's how it's played at the end. I just would have had it. It's just not brought up very much, is what I'm saying. It's not focused on as much as I think it should have been. Again, that could be in the script and we didn't see it. So I don't know.
Right.
But there's that, and then also the whole opening with Meaty and having fans, like there's something that wasn't explained there. Like why are people obsessed with her, with what she did? Like there's not, like, it's really hard. Like if they're specifically referencing the low shoulder thing, then there needs to be more of, I don't know. There's so many parts of this movie that I'm like, there's so much context I feel got like forced out by dumb executives.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel about this movie. But I think it's brutally hilarious. I'm with you. My husband had never seen it, so when I did my rewatch for this podcast, he watched it with me, and he was laughing his ass off the whole. He loved it. He loved this movie. I think Megan Fox is freaking hilarious in this movie.
It is a truly great, flat out movie star performance. Like it's one of those things where people can act in a totally different world that nobody else inhabits, and yet you totally buy it. Yeah.
Well, and her casting, like I was saying, is perfect because she was viewed as this sexual object with no redeeming value unfairly, and because of that fucking asshole Michael Bay. So like, well, and also, thousands of years of fucking
don't give Michael Bay all the credit for the patriarchy. No. He's just riding on the boat. He didn't build the boat.
Right, exactly. But
he's got a good seat on it. So
he really does. And what he did to Megan Fox is pretty fucked up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, listeners, you should definitely check out some more recent Megan Fox interviews where she talks about how he courted and sexualized her from age 12, essentially. It's really messed up. Anyway, point being, the casting of her is brilliant because that's exactly how she was treated in real life. And that is how people treated Jennifer, and that is also why people say they hate the movie. So it's so unbelievably perfect. And Amanda Seyfried is. No, I'm not going to judge you on your mispronunciation, because even though she's one of my favorite actors, I have a hard time pronouncing her name too.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Seyfried, like sci-fi.
Oh, I said Seyfried.
Yeah.
I said that. Okay. I thought you were calling me out like I got it wrong.
No, I was just trying to jump in to put it in before you you might have got it wrong. So, sorry.
Gotcha. But Amanda Seyfried is one of my favorite actors. I think I agree with y'all. Like, she is a powerhouse, and she is so good in this movie. And I remember an issue I had when I first thought I didn't like this movie aged like over a decade ago, was like, oh, she's so beautiful. I'm so tired of pretty girls getting cast as nerds. But then I thought about it, and I was like, well, but I'm attractive, and I was the unattractive nerd in high school. Usually the unattractive nerd is pretty. They just don't realize it yet because they're still finding themselves.
And so they haven't had their makeover montage yet.
Right. So I actually forgive it, because in a way it feels like a comment on that whole sort of thing. Like, the nerdy, ugly girl never really is the nerdy ugly girl. It's just how we perceive or told to perceive ourselves at that age. A lot of us find confidence and, grow up. And that's really what beauty is just being confident in who you are on all aspects. So, yeah, but I adore her. I think she's great in this movie. The very specific skewering of the absolute mess that was the mid-aughts as far as music is concerned, and like Low Shoulder and the like, is it emo? Is it goth? Is it just bad pop rock? Like, what is it? It just nails it on the head. Y'all are totally correct on that. Low Shoulder, like we were saying, is absolute perfect example of that era of music, which in my opinion is not the best. Even though, as someone who grew up in the mid-late 90s and graduated in 2001, I was technically, a member of the early emo tribe with the Get Up Kids and Saves the Day and all that stuff. I feel like the second wave of emo, like the Low Shoulder era, was not quite as, I don't know. It seemed a little bit more mainstream to me. Now I try not to judge any music anymore, because I know how toxic that attitude is. And even people like who were in the riot girl industry and in the indie rock and punk rock scene who are now older have straight up admitted, like, oh yeah, excluding people and judging everyone based on their music, maybe not the best way to be. But I'll just say I don't think it's necessarily the greatest era for music. There was a lot of douchery in that era. A lot of douchebags got famous around that time, and I feel like Diablo just nails it so intensely. And also, as far as like Jennifer's obsession with like sleeping with this guy and obsession with the band, I like pre demon possession, that version of Jen, if you ignore the fact that she was popular and beautiful, that was me. I was that girl in high school that was like, oh my God, we got to go see this band at this stupid little terrible place that's like not a dive bar but has a sticker toilet. I agree with you. Great line. Like that was me. I was like, oh my God, this guy's so cute, and oh, I'm gonna go see this band, and like that's what I was 100% that teen girl, except I was like a little riot girl punk rock nerd. So I was going to like emos in Austin when it was still on Red River. And it was like all ages, and it was like the cool place to be because you could go see, like, I went and saw Bratmobile, and I never got to see Bikini Kill in their heyday, but I saw Bratmobile, I saw Sleater-Kinney, like all these bands I would go and see. as a little young, punk riot girl and, have my sort of, really it was like a crush on their person, not so much based on what they look like. It was like, oh my God, you write this amazing music, or you sing this amazing music, and you're a woman, or you're a man, or you're not, or like whatever. Because I'm pan. At the time I wasn't out, but like I had a lot of crushes I was very confused about.
And now you have a lot of crushes you're just very excited about. So, it's good.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like she nailed that aspect of being, and like San Antonio isn't a small town, which is where I grew up, but it's a huge city with a small town feel. If anyone from San Antonio will completely agree with me, because even though it's a huge city, it does not feel that way. Especially if you were in the punk scene in any way, shape, or form. It was pretty small. So I just, I really felt for her. And I think that's why I have such a hard time, like, calling her a bad person and not innocent. Because to me, she was a woman who was trying to figure out her place in the world and was maybe going through a bad spot of just embracing all this toxic shit that was dumped on her and being like, fine, you want me to be the sexy bad girl? I'll be the sexy bad girl. But if Jennifer hadn't been so wrongfully yet hilariously sacrificed by a bunch of low-shoulder douchebags, she probably would have grown up to be a Kathleen Hanna. I feel like she would be apologizing to Needy and be like, I can't believe I treated you like that. I truly feel that way.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I truly do. I truly feel like she would have grown up to realize that that was not the way to go. I really do. I really do. Just being someone who has friends that used to be mean girls, that I wasn't friends with them when they were mean girls, but they're cool adults now. And they're like, I can't believe I fell into that trap. I was such a mean girl asshole. And they're some of the nicest, fucking, most supportive, amazing people I know nowadays. It is a very easy trap to fall into, especially when you're a teenage girl, because it is encouraged. Much more than being nice is, weirdly enough. So that's really, this is the main thing that I feel like y'all got wrong is in that Jennifer is this not innocent, irredeemable person, which I 100% disagree with.
Oh, I would never, I don't think we said irredeemable. I don't believe
anyone
that's fair.
No, you didn't.
Irredeemable. But can I not to disagree, but just to give you a sense of where.
Oh, of course. Yes.
So basically all of the areas where you take us to task, and I'll just say take me to task, because I think mostly those things that you're bringing up are things that I said, which is fair. It's good, because I'm the one here who can answer them. All come from projection. Like you, right. When you see Jennifer's, and I think this is why we need you on this podcast, because when you watch Jennifer's body, you watch it from inside Jennifer's body. When I watch Jennifer's body, I watch it from outside of Jennifer's body, whether there's sympathy or antagonism or whatever. That's just the relationship. So to me, when I say that she reminds me of Kathleen Hanna, I'm thinking, I remember running into Kathleen Hanna at a Kinko's when she was helping Carrie Brownstein like print out flyers for her new band.
Oh God, you're talking about all of my favorite fucking people.
But basically, I related to her kind of the way that goth kid did, was sort of like, oh my God, you're talking to me. So that, in that sense, that's what I mean, is just sort of like when not that she is like Kathleen Hanna in any way,
great.
Other than that she has these eyes that when she looks at you, boys melt in one way.
Okay, that's fair. That is, yes. No, boys and women. No, Kathleen had a big old crushery, as was Carrie Bradstein at all of Sleater-Kinney.
Right.
So yeah.
So that's where that is. And then with the idea that she is, I think the idea of when we're talking, I think this is where Brian brought up the idea of the innocent. It's not that we're saying that she's not innocent in that she's guilty, but in that she's not the virginal.
And here's where I have the problem.
I mean, like, what I mean is like
associating innocence with
that's
virginity.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is I'm saying that in a traditional horror film, the victim of these guys would be portrayed in that virginal Carrie.
Right.
She is someone who is completely sheltered from the world, and then the big bad wolf comes and gets her. Whereas in this, and this is one of the things that I think is strong about it, is that Jennifer is portrayed not as a sweet, nice person who we're supposed to feel sorry for, but she is portrayed as, well, as I don't want
a real human being with faults.
Yeah, as all these other, and well, she's not a real human being. She is like this super exceptional character who's what you're saying is that she is treated this way. Like, she represents to the world as the alpha girl in her world, as opposed to who would usually be the target of the killers in a movie like this, someone who we're immediately told sympathize with, as opposed to see as the, if it was, if it was a male character, she's the James Dean and Amanda Seyfried is the Sal Mineo.
Right.
So that's what I mean by that. And then as far as, and again, and so for me, the projection part is girls like that were terrifying to me as a teenager.
Right.
And they were also very mean. And so when I say that, to me, the Jennifer that I see is a terrible person, because I knew, because people like her terrorized me and my friends. Just like if she was the football star, or like Vincent, we paired this with Brown Bunny, because I feel like in a similar way, like, any person deserves compassion, and any person who's cruel became cruel probably because of some cruelty to them.
Yes.
And that is, I think, and if you watch, and so it sort of explains why someone can watch Brown Bunny and be like, yes, Vincent Gallo there's a lot that's wrong with him. And I can watch this movie and feel inside of that and feel the pain in it. And it creates compassion for this person who represents as a toxic male. And I feel like there's the similar thing. And it's like, it's intuitive with Jennifer's body. Like, I don't have the experience of, I've never known really a person like Jennifer. I don't think. Maybe I have, but even in adult life, people, quote, like that live in this rarefied alpha world. And I kind of hang out in more of the beta world.
Yep.
So,
no, I'm the same. I'm the same, dude.
This is not at all to discount. Everything you say is right in terms of your, and why we have you here, because people are probably listening to this who can relate to Jennifer's body from the standpoint of being inside it and being like, wait a second, you called her terrible? You said she wasn't innocent? She's nothing like Kathleen Hanna. And all of those things are valid. Just understand that where I'm coming from in saying
I
those
totally
is
understand that.
as
Absolutely.
the weak boy who's like, oh my God, why is she so mean to me? As opposed to I don't want to, I don't think she should be burned at the stake or judged in some terrible way.
Yeah.
But do you notice that at the beginning, like, she is very clearly represented as a hunter of boys before she becomes the killer of boys.
Well, yes. However, hunter doesn't feel right, because that
she calls them tasty morsels.
Oh, what? So men don't? Teenage boys don't call women
It's not. Yes, of course they do. And you would call those boys hunters or predators if they talked like that.
Well, you
in
would
a
call
film.
them regular boys,
Well,
right? Like in general, here's my thing.
Yeah.
The behavior that she's displaying is behavior that has long been considered normal for boys and abnormal for girls, which is an inherently unfair. I say that as someone who, although I was very nerdy, I was a horny fucking teenager. Like, I constantly was like trying to hunt down someone to hang out with. And that didn't make me a, a hunter and a bad thing. She's not a rapist.
No. I guess can I jump in here?
She takes advantage. Yeah.
Because the point, but I'm just talking about, like, if I'm writing a screenplay and I have someone who's going to be a hunter when they get bit by a wolf or a vampire or a sexy snake or whatever. And then before that happens, I set up that they already have the latent qualities that are going to come out.
Oh, she's horny as shit. Yeah, well, she's horny as fuck. Yeah.
But she's not. But the language that Diablo Cody puts in her mouth is they're tasty morsels.
Right.
And she's going to go, and they're salty. And like all of the words she uses have to do with taste and with eating and devouring. And then she becomes a eating, hunting, devouring demon. So...
Right.
I hear what you're saying.
Well,
I'm not trying to...
She's turned into one. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to, like, paint it with a wide brush and say, oh, this speaks to all women. I think, to me, it's more like a recognition of the skill of Diablo Cody and Karyn Kusama in that from the very beginning of this movie, it's giving you messages and telling you things on a very, like, that are not... They're subtle, but they're not that subtle.
But it's also clearly a comment on that, though.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Having her be that in charge of her sexuality and that aware of her desire, that women being aware of their own desire has often been considered evil. In general, I mean, you just look at the slasher trope, and mostly in the Jason movies, but, like...
Yeah.
If you're not a virgin, you're evil and you need to die. Like, they're very clearly commenting on that, which I love, that reversal, because it's how, a lot of us grew up. A lot of girls, we were told we're not supposed to be sexual, and then a lot of us are, and it causes a lot of weird shit. I can say from experience, and a lot of confusion about that. And that's, why a lot of women I know, take back the word slut and whore and things like that. Because it's like, no, you want to call, I'm a fucking slut. It's not a bad thing. Fuck you. Which is clearly a huge point that's being made in this movie, which I love so much, but I think does get missed by people.
Well, I think that's what's so exciting about the film, and I think even in its sort of troubled history, is that flip of like, this was marketed to the wrong audience.
Yeah.
And at the same time...
Although, in a weird way, the right audience.
Right, exactly.
That really is who should hear it, but they're not going to get that message.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to say is like, it's marketed to the wrong audience, but that doesn't mean that is the wrong audience for the film.
Right. Yeah.
It just means that, that's again why it's so important to have you here, is because the film is raising a conversation. And I think the way the world is wrong about this movie, I think probably from both audiences that it could be intended for, is that people did not, I don't think anyone saw how smart, how just over the top, like, because the film is it's like a teenage film, and Megan Fox is not who you necessarily think of as like the face of a really intellectual film,
right.
And it's very colorful, and it's horror, and the title is definitely trolly in certain ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And all of that creates this confusion that you think you're getting something that's very light and frothy entertainment, and what you get is something that is so much more challenging and so much smarter all the way through, and it requires a conversation that the film never got. And I feel like it. Actually, I don't want to say it's never got, because I've listened to a bunch of podcasts, and now it feels like this film. I mean, Amanda Seyfried is probably going to win an Oscar this year, so she's getting her own. We need to get Karyn Kusama and Diablo Cody the credit they deserve, because I just
no shit.
This film is it's masterpiece adjacent, I would say.
Yes.
It is.
I agree.
It is so close that it should be talked about. It's such an important and valid film. And when you look at the trajectory of the people who came out of it and what they are doing, that draws it even further into the masterpiece world, because it's like, okay,
I agree.
All of these really amazing people collaborated on this kind of light film, but it's not light at all. It's so much more. And so, and that it brings up all of these conversations, and that
it does.
It invites you. This is a film that invites the male gaze and questions it at the same time. That I feel like it also invites the riot girl, you go girlness, but also questions that.
Yes.
And that's to me, that's just a sign of great filmmaking. Male, female, whatever. It's just so
agree.
Good.
I agree. And you know what's so crazy too, and it has a lot of similarities with one of my favorite movies of all time, which I personally love more than Jennifer's Body. And that's not to denigrate Jennifer's Body. It's just, I think Teeth does a lot of the things that Jennifer's Body was trying to do, but more succinctly, but it got the same treatment when it came out.
Which one?
Which is Teeth.
Oh.
Which came out 2 years before Jennifer's Body. And Teeth is very much a movie that was marketed as, it's about vagina dentata, and it's very much treated as poorly as Jennifer's Body, as far as like marketed to the wrong people, and then people went in thinking they're going to see this campy movie about a girl with teeth for a vagina, and that movie is not that. I mean, there's campy elements to it, but that is a movie with an absurdly strong feminist stand, very, very clear message. It is one of my absolute all-time favorite movies ever, and that movie needs to be on your podcast. That movie is like, people, when that came out, people did not get it. That was not treated properly. And Jess Wexler in Teeth, her performance is one of my favorite performances by a woman in a lead movie ever, 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 ever. She's incredible. And if you've never seen Teeth, it's the vagina dentata movie. It's got Hale Appleman's in it too, and he's gone on to have a pretty good career right now. There's a lot of good people in that movie, but I have been a champion for that movie since it came out, and I've been the person that's always like, oh, you want to see an amazing feminist horror movie that's not like talked about enough, or is constantly miscategorized as being anti-feminist when it's the complete opposite? It's fucking Teeth. That movie's brilliant. And it has a lot of similarities with Jennifer's Body. You have a girl who is your lead, who is being taken over by something. However, in Teeth, it's a defense mechanism, so that anytime a man tries to, sexually assault her, let's be honest, her natural defense mechanism is that her vagina grows teeth and it bites their dick off. Like, it is a modern horror fairy tale about a young girl learning how to handle her own sexuality and finding out that she's got this demon inside of her, and learning, what she's going to do with that. It is a fucking incredible goddamn movie. And if this podcast gets people who have seen Jennifer's Body and haven't seen Teeth to see Teeth, then I did my goddamn job. Because Teeth is one of the first movies we reviewed on Women in Caskets, 7, 8 years ago. Will to this day be one of my favorite movies of all time. I have seen it countless times. And there's so many similarities between Teeth and Jennifer's Body in theme. Like, so many things. But where they vary is the men in Jennifer's Body aren't explicitly evil. Like, her victims are these dudes that, in comparison to most men in horror movie, don't really deserve what comes to them at all. And in Teeth, she only kills men that are very clearly sexual predators. So she becomes like a superhero, seducing and then, murdering sexual predators, essentially. But a lot of people thought that, they were going to go into this silly, campy movie. And really, it's this, like, fucking genius indie fairy tale.
You just pulled a classic Brian video store move.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about Jennifer's Body? Well, yeah, you think you do. But what you really want to see is Teeth.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
So, we can find you, Mr. Jones, on your other show, Radio 8 Ball, where you answer questions by picking songs at random. So you said you had some have you had some Riot Girl bands on Radio 8 Ball? I know they hate you and they don't want to talk to you.
It's not that they hate me and don't want to talk to me. It's just like they don't like the cut of my jib. They don't like the fact that I have a jib at all.
But have you had any guests you'd like to talk about?
When we did the Transfused, the queer punk rock opera that I spoke about in the episode with Zach Carlson, because we were both in it, around that time, I was sort of like included in that community for a while. So at that time, we had Nomi Lamb, who was one of the original Riot Girls. She was on the show. And I think we had some of the folks from The Need.
Great.
Call in and be on the show. And it's funny, here's the thing. So I cannot be a Riot Girl, but I feel kind of, I just feel like that's one of the big influences on my life. Not necessarily the music, but the aesthetic of it. And I've been sort of like I've been waiting for a lot of the cultural shifts that have happened in the last 5 or 10 years, my whole life, because I was raised by a feminist woman in Olympia, Washington. And so she would have loved to have had a daughter who could grow up to be a Riot Girl and make movies like this, as opposed to a son who would mansplain this movie to the audience.
Someday I want a son who can explain a movie made by a woman on a podcast to other men listening to it and women listening to it. Yeah.
No, what do you think? What do you think the breakdown of our audience is? Do you think it's I don't know. Do you think it's mostly men who listen to this? Feels like it's mostly women who comment on our Instagram.
That's very true. I don't know. The world of podcasts to me is a baffling place that I know that I don't listen to podcasts, and the people that I know who do are women. So I'm just gonna go on a limb and say 99% women, and there's like 2 guys that that listen to this.
So we just lost
everybody.
Like half of our audience.
You just lost everybody.
No, come on. No. I genuinely love this film, and I should say I you know what one thing I didn't get to say in the last section. I'm sort of I don't have a lot to say about Radio 8 Ball right now. I just say check it out. We got lots of episodes. But one thing, I tried to watch more Diablo Cody films. It's Diablo. A lot of them I couldn't track down, but I did watch Tully, and that's another really, really interesting movie. And I highly recommend it. I highly recommend just following Diablo Cody. You got that one right. Good job. She is cutting a swath as a writer and making just films and TV shows that I don't think anyone else would make. Tully is a very specific and unique film, and I don't want to describe it and I don't want to spoil it, but I definitely recommend checking that out. Also, United States of Terror, which was a series with Toni Collette that I really, really enjoyed. So, yeah. And, yeah, check out Radio 8 Ball. It's a podcast. We answer questions by picking songs at random and interpreting them like musical tarot cards. And I would love to have Diablo Cody as a guest on the show someday. That would be awesome. I would love to hear what her question for the Pop Oracle would be. It might be like, when are you going to stop mansplaining my movie, Andras?
Hey, you know what? Every episode we analyze and overtly explain our movies, no matter who made them. So, you know, right. we do it to everybody. We're equal opportunity explaining. That's what all podcasts are. It's someone overtly explaining something that you didn't want to know. Did you even want to know so much about? So
I can imagine you're preparing for Diablo Cody. It's Diablo season of the Director's Wall.
Well, has she directed anything?
I don't know. Has she?
Someone should do a writer's wall. Do a show where you go through everything by a writer.
Oh yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah,
that you have to be a director to be on the director's
wall.
Yes. I mean, she definitely is interesting. I definitely want to see Tully and Young Adult. Those two look very fascinating, and I do really like Charlize Theron quite a bit. So I think if you recommend Tully, then I'm going to seek it out. But no Diablo Cody director's wall. But not because it's Diablo Cody. It's because she's not a director. She starts directing.
She has directed one film. She directed a film called Paradise.
Okay.
With Holly Hunter and Nick Offerman.
Huh. Never even heard of that movie.
Yeah, I haven't. It came out in 2013. So
okay.
She directed one and was like, I'd rather let other people direct.
Writing's better. Films, it's the better job.
Yeah, you'd get to do it at home.
You just mail it to Hollywood. You just send it to the Hollywood sign. And then someone picks it up and maybe makes a movie. It's great.
Yeah. So right now you are in the middle of exploring the work of Francis Ford Coppola. As of this recording, you just released your Rumblefish episode.
Finally!
Which was great.
Long overdue. How many episodes did I say that's the one we're going to be on? Like 5 or 7 of them?
Yeah.
Well, we finally did it. Now I don't have to say that that's upcoming ever again. Yeah, no, it's fun. I'm excited to keep digging into it.
Yeah, and who was that? Who did you do the crossover episode with?
Oh yeah, Shane Hazen. I think that's how you say it. Hazen. I just want to say it like Jerry Lewis. Shane Hazen of the Phi Phenomenon, and he was a great guest. I watched the Oscars with him once. He was a good person to watch it with. He has his own podcast called the Phi PHI. Yeah, Phi Phenomenon. And he's got he always has great film critics on there and different he always analyzes movies in a very smart way. And so we invited him in to talk about Rumblefish, and he was great. And I'm going to have you on when we do the Coppola Grisham movie, because you keep talking about that one being good. So I think that you would be a good guest for that one.
As long as I get to do one of the episodes for a film that Mickey Rourke is in, then I'll be fine.
Oh, he's in that? I didn't even know that. That's exciting.
Yeah. I was very happy to hear you talk about Rumblefish because I've been because it's one of my favorite films, and you guys gave it a lot of love, but it was a new film for both you and AJ.
Yeah.
Which was also why I was glad you had Shane on there, because he had read the books and he was steeped in Rumblefish and S.E. Hinton lore. And so it's always good to be able to tag in someone who's got, you guys went back and forth. You didn't always agree on stuff, but it was a really great episode. And
thank you.
If you like Rumblefish, you should check it out. And if you don't like Rumblefish, you should check it out to find out why you should. And if you haven't watched Rumblefish, don't feel bad, because even people who've watched a ton of movies like you and AJ hadn't gotten around to it. But if you listen to this episode, you'll want to go and check it out. That's my recommendation. And by the time people are hearing this, you'll probably, you'll be on to, you want to hazard a guess as to what what Coppola film will be covered in the beginning of April?
Tucker, Man in His Dream. That's my guess. You never know.
Yeah. I'm a fan of that and its porn parody.
What's that?
Fucker, a Man in His Cream. No.
Boo.
Just had to get our explicit rating on it.
Oh my God.
Sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
Now the Riot Girls really don't like you, Andras.
Or maybe they do. Don't mansplain their feelings to them.
Okay, you're right. Sorry.
Don't treat them like they're fragile flowers. You can't take a joke about porn.
Well, I don't like you
Diablo
for it.
Cody.
I'm offended.
Well, that's okay.
Don't there's a nice movie about a man making cars. You had to turn it filthy. Come on.
You're just a dude. Watch out. Jennifer Check might eat you.
True.
Okay. Check out both of our podcasts. We work very hard at them, and you should check out Brian's. You should check out mine. And please write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can contact us on Instagram @theworldiswrongpodcast. And Brian's phone number is, no, I'm not going to give that out here. I'm sure that we messed up in our discussion of Jennifer's body. So please feel free to correct us, enlighten us, put us on the right path, let us know where we got it wrong, or, miracle of miracles, if we got it right. And again, let us know what you think we should be doing if you have any suggestions for the Oscars. And next week, we're going to be covering a film by a guy who Jennifer Check would love to eat. Maybe she would reject him. Brown Bunny by Vincent Gallo. We've been talking about it.
Oh boy.
For months. It's time. It is finally time. This is a film also that I would probably have put up for my Oscar nominee for the year it came out. But
yeah,
not a film
I'm excited
that would ever be nominated for an Oscar. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Interesting. I hope, yeah.
Have you seen, I'll tell you something. I've only seen Brown Bunny once because I saw it in a theater and it was such a powerful experience. I'm really looking forward to going back to it. Have you seen it multiple times?
Yes, I've seen it a lot, yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad. So you're going to be the expert in that. I'm just going to be the one who is super excited to be having the conversation about it.
You'll be the Gordon Lightfoot fan showing up to the table.
Oh, yeah. I love that scene. I love so many scenes in that movie. Well, unless there's anything else we have to add.
No?
No? Okay, well, then, folks, just remember, wherever you are, the world is wrong, and it's probably wrong about you.
It smells like Thai food in here. Have you guys been fucking?
You're gross.
You're gross.
You're gross.
It's so gross.
Fuck you.
Let's go to the club.
Quality Lane is not a club, it's a bar. In fact, it's not even a bar, it's like a bingo hall with taps.
Eat my ass, Chip. You're just jello because you're not invited.
Jello? That place is disgusting. Everyone in there has a mustache.
You're totally jello. You're lime green jello, and you can't even admit it to yourself.
Stop kidnapping my girlfriend.
Chip was right. Melody Lane is definitely not a club. Clubs are for attractive people in populous urban areas. Clubs have DJs and champagne. All we have is a jukebox and a sticker toilet.
You got that one right.
Good job.